Welcome back. You're listening to Houston Real Estate Radio. The call-in number here, if you've got a real estate question, is 281-882-8088. We'll be happy to answer your real estate questions right here in the studio every Sunday evening at 6 o'clock, 281-882-8088. You can also join us over on Facebook where we put information out throughout the week. And if you miss any of today's show, you can watch the videos at HoustonRealEstateRadio.com. This segment, I want to talk a little bit about mud districts. People moving in from different parts of the country aren't familiar with our mud districts that we have here in the Houston area. Want to talk a little bit about those. I've brought in Jim Sheffield today. He's the general manager for the Northampton Mud District, which is in the Houston area. And he's been there for over 22 years. He knows the district very well. So we're going to get a lot of great information on. We're not going to focus on that district. We just want to talk more general about mud districts. You know, where is that money going that's collected every year? What are they doing for the different communities? Because most of the communities around Houston have a mud district. The outlying areas around Houston have mud districts. So welcome to the show, Jim.
Hey, great to be here.
So you've been there a long time. Lot of wealth of information that you have about mud districts. Tell us, for people moving in here, they've never had a mud district that they've had to pay a tax on. What is a mud district?
Municipal utility districts were created to provide city water and sewer services to areas that were outside of cities. So they're
suburbs.
Suburbs for the most part, and subdivisions basically that are everywhere. So that's what they are, and they answer to the state of Texas. They're a political subdivision of the state of Texas. They have taxing authority, and they are generally run by elected boards and regulated by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. So that's their mission, and over the years they've been granted further authorities. They can get into things like fire protection and recreational facilities and things like that. So in a way, they're like a small city government in lieu of a small city government.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and they work closely with a lot of the HOAs.
Well, HOAs are another entity that exists within subdivisions. And generally, they concern themselves with deed restrictions and esplanade maintenance and things like that. But there are a lot of gray areas, and the neighborhoods generally evolve and work that out themselves.
And you have to live in the community to be a part of that mud district, right?
Well, you have to be a property owner. So
you don't have to live there. You just have to own property.
Right. You have to own property to be elected to the board.
Okay. And board members, usually about 5 board members?
Yes, there are five board members, and they're elected. 2 are elected during one election, and then 2 years later, the other 3 would be elected, or it might be vice versa. But
so you really need to know that you're going to be living, or at least a property owner in that subdivision for the next 4 or 5 years.
Well, if you leave, then the board has the right to go and appoint a replacement until the next election.
Okay. So if people wanted to get involved in their mud district, what advice would you give them?
Well, I would say go to the meetings. And
the meetings are open to the public,
The meetings are open, and there's a posted agenda. And you can find out where that is by getting in touch with either your operator, or if you have a general manager, which some do, you can contact the office and they can tell you. So go to your meetings and see if there are any issues that you want to get involved with. And you can be placed on the agenda by contacting the attorney, and it might be a good time to talk about who all these...
Yeah, let's talk about that. I know there are a lot of people who consult the board members because the board members obviously don't know everything about the mud when they come on board. I mean,
no, absolutely not.
You know, they're neighborhood residents. They may or may not have much knowledge about the board, so they need a lot of help.
Well, they do need a lot of help, and keep in mind that most of these projects are water plants, sewer. They're funded by bond issues. That's complicated. You need financial advice. You need legal advice. You need engineering. And all of these entities are consultants to the board. Mm-hmm. So you're going to go out and have a group of consultants that advise the board. Now, they don't make decisions for the board in any way, but they will tell the board what they think in their professional opinion, and it works well.
Okay, so tell us about how a mud district comes about. How does it get established? Just kind of from the beginning. Like a developer wants to put in a community, they go out and buy land. What's the next step?
Right, and that's a great question because it's an evolutionary process. The developer goes out, he finds a piece of land, 5,000-6,000 acres, whatever, and then he makes a design and he puts in water lines, streets, detention ponds, and everything that it takes, sewer lines and the plants and this, that, and the other, everything that it takes to make a subdivision function. Mm-hmm. Then there's a mud district that is created, a developer district, and he appoints the members at that point because there are no residents.
Right.
And so as taxable value is put on the ground, in other words, houses or retail space or whatever, mm-hmm. as taxable value is put on the ground, then he is allowed to go back and ask the mud district to reimburse him for a portion of it or all of it. That's a negotiated thing. And then as people start living there and become property owners, then they begin to replace the developer's board. But at first, that's the way it happens. Then as they get a resident board, you spend a portion of your tax money paying down debt, paying those bonds that originally financed the deal. And the other portion of your tax money goes to running the water and sewer plants and doing the things that are necessary to keep the district going. And then as the neighborhood gets older, such as the one that I work in, you begin laying down this debt. And so it's even entirely possible in older subdivisions to reduce the tax rate because you've paid off your debt. So that's the three phases that happen.
So as a buyer coming in, the things that you need, one of the things that you definitely need to know is that buying a home that's in a mud district that's a brand new construction house is going to have a higher mud bill than another neighborhood that's an older established community.
Well, it's likely, but let me give you another scenario. We're an older district that I run, but another 400 acres, which had been annexed into the district, is now being built upon.
Okay.
So sometimes there's a hybrid situation mm-hmm. that goes on, but more than likely, if you're looking at new land, you're going to have a little bit higher mud taxes than, say, an older established neighborhood.
So who originally funds the mud district? Is it the builder developer that's originally funding it?
It's the developer, and they need to show up with this money or they won't get that district created.
Okay, and then once it's created, then people are buying bonds to pay them back.
Right. Well, the district is selling bonds to people who mm-hmm. are buying bonds, of mm-hmm. course, and then that money goes to reimburse the developer.
Okay, and so at what point is a developer usually out of the mud district? How long does that usually take?
When the last lot is sold.
Okay.
So it all depends on the market. Today's market, at least on the north side up here, is going to be pretty quick.
Okay. All right. And the money that the mud district makes in taxes every year from property owners, where does that money go?
Okay. The tax money is split two ways. One to the maintenance of the
facilities,
water, sewer plants, things mm-hmm. like that. The other is debt service, so paying back the original loans.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned recreation facilities. How does Mud District play into recreation facilities?
Well, a number of years ago, the Texas legislature realized that that older neighborhoods have a hard time keeping their pools going mm-hmm. and keeping things, parks going, building new parks and things like that. Once the developer was gone, they would build them as amenities mm-hmm. and then pull out and just give them to the neighborhood, but it's one of those gifts that asks for something back.
Sure.
So the state decided that they could come in and help. So that's how that all plays in.
Okay, interesting. A lot of good information. I think that most of the neighborhoods out here in the suburbs have these mud districts, and you really need to know a lot about them when you're purchasing in these communities. So a lot of good information. Appreciate you coming on and giving us some of your advice and opinion from 22 years working over at Northampton's mud district. Appreciate your information.
Well, glad to be here.
All right, we'll be right back here on Houston Real Estate Radio.